Welcome to our deep dive today, all about AI in healthcare. I think this is going to be a really interesting one. We've got research here looking at everything from AI models that can analyze medical images like X-rays, to even LLMs, large language models, and how those are being used to understand all that complicated medical information and research.
It's really incredible to think about just how much potential AI has to, completely change how we approach healthcare. I mean, just imagine being able to, get faster and more accurate diagnoses, have treatment plans that are tailored to you specifically, and even maybe predict and prevent diseases before they even become a problem.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty amazing future.
Sure.
So I guess the question is, where do we even start with all this research? What's really stood out to you?
Well, I think a good place to start is with how AI is already being used to improve diagnosis and treatment planning. And a lot of that starts with analyzing medical images.
Okay, so we're talking about things like X-rays and scans.
Exactly. And one area where we're already seeing some really promising results is in skin cancer detection. A team of researchers actually found that they could significantly improve the accuracy of skin cancer detection by using a specific type of AI called a convolutional neural network, or a CNN. And these CNNs are particularly good at image analysis.
Yeah, I mean, skin cancer is something that I think we're all becoming much more aware of these days. We're always being told to check our skin for any changes. So is this something that AI could help with?
Potentially, yes. AI could be able to spot those subtle signs of skin cancer that might be missed by the human eye. And that early detection, as you know, can be absolutely critical for treating skin cancer successfully.
Absolutely. I mean, early detection is really key for so many different conditions.
Mhm.
Are there other areas where we're seeing these kinds of results with AI and image analysis?
Oh, definitely. Another really interesting application is in the field of radiotherapy planning. So this is for cancer treatment. And a team of researchers have developed a system called AIRTP, which stands for Automated Iterative RT Planning.
Okay, so what does this AIRTP actually do?
Well, it uses AI to automate the process of creating a radiotherapy plan. Traditionally, this is a really time-consuming manual process for doctors.
So this could potentially speed up treatment for patients.
Exactly. By using AI, doctors can get a high-quality radiotherapy plan much faster, which could mean that patients can start treatment sooner and potentially recover more quickly.
I mean, faster treatment, less waiting.
Hmm.
I don't think anyone would argue with that.
Yes.
Well, so we've talked about static images, but what about video? Is AI being used to analyze that as well?
Absolutely. There's actually a system that's being developed to assess lung ultrasound videos. So, the kind that are used to check for lung conditions.
Oh, wow. So something that's probably become even more important in recent years.
Definitely. Especially, after what we've all been through with the pandemic. And this system, it's called MetaVLED. And it analyzes these lung ultrasound videos and automatically scores the severity of any lung conditions that it detects.
So faster and more accurate diagnosis, especially in situations where you might not have immediate access to a specialist. I mean, that could be really valuable.
Absolutely. And, this is just a small sample. AI is being used to analyze images from CT scans and MRIs, and even to help interpret pathology slides.
It's amazing to think about just how many different areas of healthcare this could potentially impact. But all of these AI systems, they all rely on data, don't they?
Yes, that's right. And it's a crucial point. You see these deep learning models, they need huge amounts of data to learn and to become accurate. And this actually brings up some really important considerations about, how we use and share patient data responsibly. It's something that we'll need to explore a bit later on.
Yeah, because obviously data privacy is a big concern for everyone. But before we get to that, I want to talk about another really interesting development in AI. And that's these large language models, or LLMs, as you mentioned. Are these being used in healthcare as well? So these large language models, these LLMs, what exactly are they? I feel like I've heard the term, but I'm not really sure I understand what they are.
Well, you can think of them as these incredibly sophisticated computer programs that can really understand and process human language. So they can, read tons and tons of text, learn from it, and then use all of that knowledge to do things like answer questions, generate new text, and even translate languages.
So basically, they're like these super-powered language experts.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And what's really exciting is that researchers are finding all sorts of ways to apply these LLMs in the healthcare field.
Okay, so how are they actually being used? Can you give me some examples?
Well, one really promising area is using LLMs to help doctors and researchers really quickly access and understand all of the information that's out there in medical literature. I mean, imagine being able to ask an LLM a complex medical question and actually get back a concise, accurate answer that's based on the very latest research.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly useful, especially in a field like healthcare where, new research is coming out all the time.
Exactly. And there's actually a team of researchers who have developed something called evidence map. And this evidence map uses a type of LLM to analyze just mountains of scientific papers and then provide answers to those really complex biomedical questions.
So it's like having this super-powered research assistant that can sift through all the medical jargon and highlight the really important stuff.
Exactly. And this could really help to speed up, the pace of medical discovery and help to bring those new treatments to patients a lot faster.
But LLMs can do more than just analyze research papers, right?
That's right.
What about, helping us understand our own personal health information?
Well, they can definitely help with that too. Imagine being able to ask your electronic health records specific questions. Things about your health history or your current medications, and get back really clear, easy to understand answers.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
All the technical language in medical records, it's just so difficult to understand sometimes.
Exactly. And that's where LLMs can be incredibly helpful. They can take all that complex medical jargon and translate it into everyday language so that patients can really understand it.
So it's about making healthcare information more accessible to everyone.
Precisely.
But it's not just about providing information, is it? These LLMs are also being used to help doctors make more informed decisions about, diagnosis and treatment.
That's right.
How does that work?
Well, one example is a system called LLM-MedQA, and this was developed by researchers to improve medical question answering. So this system can analyze a patient's medical history, their current symptoms, and even the latest research findings to suggest potential diagnoses or treatment options.
So it's like having another expert opinion available to the doctor.
You could think of it that way, yes. But it's really important to remember that these LLMs are just tools. They're there to assist doctors, not to replace them. So the final decision-making always rests with the human physician.
Right. It's about combining, the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So the AI's ability to process all that information and the doctor's expertise and experience.
Exactly.
But as with any new technology, especially a powerful technology like this, there are those ethical considerations, aren't there?
Of course.
I mean, data privacy is a big one.
Absolutely.
If these LLMs are learning from our medical data, we want to make sure that that information is being handled responsibly.
You're absolutely right. And researchers are very aware of these concerns, and they're working on ways to address them. One promising approach is something called federated learning. And this allows AI models to be trained on data that actually stays in its original location, like a hospital or a clinic.
So instead of bringing all the data to one central place, the AI actually learns from data that's spread out across multiple different locations.
Exactly. So the AI model gets little bits of knowledge from each location, but without actually ever seeing the full patient data.
Oh, that's clever. So it's kind of like sending the AI to school at different hospitals, but it never learns the names of the students.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And this is just one of the ways that researchers are working to make sure that AI in healthcare is developed and used in a responsible way.
That's good to hear. So we've talked a lot about how AI can help with diagnosis and treatment planning, but are there other areas of healthcare where AI is making an impact?
Oh, definitely. One area that I think has a lot of potential is in automating those administrative tasks that take up so much of a doctor's time.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a huge help. Doctors always seem to be drowning in paperwork.
Right, and that's where these LLMs can come in. Actually, there are some researchers in Germany who are exploring how to use LLMs to automate the documentation of tumor diagnoses.
So instead of having to manually enter all that information into the system, the AI could do it automatically.
Exactly. And they found that these LLMs could accurately identify tumor diagnoses from patient records, assign the correct medical codes, and even extract the date of the first diagnosis.
Oh, that would free up so much time for doctors to actually focus on patient care.
Exactly. And, it's not just about saving time. It could also help to reduce errors and improve the accuracy of those medical records.
Yeah, that sounds like a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like AI has the potential to touch so many different aspects of healthcare.
It really does. And honestly, we're just scratching the surface. I mean, AI is also being used to predict the progression of diseases like chronic kidney disease, to help select the right patients for clinical trials, and even to assist with wound assessment in home healthcare settings.
This is all so fascinating. It really sounds like AI is going to completely revolutionize healthcare as we know it. But I'm also curious about what's next. What are some of the research areas that are really pushing the boundaries of AI in healthcare even further? So much research, it's amazing. Where do we even begin to think about what's next?
I know, it's really incredible how much is happening. But I think one thing that's really interesting is this idea of making these AI models more efficient, especially when it comes to training them.
Okay, what do you mean by efficient?
Well, I mean, a couple things. Using less computing power is one thing, but also being able to train these models with less data. Traditionally, these deep learning models need huge amounts of data to work well. But what about those situations where you don't have, millions of patient records to work with, like when you're dealing with a rare disease?
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't really teach an AI if you don't have enough information to give it.
Right, exactly. And that's where this idea of transfer learning comes in.
What's that?
So it's basically this idea of taking the knowledge that an AI model has already learned from one task and applying it to a new but related task. So for example, let's say you have an AI model that's been trained to identify different types of cells in images of healthy tissue. You might be able to use some of that knowledge to help it learn to identify cancerous cells.
So instead of starting from scratch each time, you're kind of building on what the AI already knows.
Exactly. And researchers are finding that this transfer learning can really reduce the amount of data that's needed to train these AI models, which could be really important for rare diseases or in situations where large data sets just aren't available.
So this could lead to faster development of AI tools for conditions that maybe haven't received as much attention in the past.
Absolutely. And this actually ties into this broader trend of developing what are called foundational models for healthcare specifically.
Foundational models, they sound important.
Yeah, they are. So these are basically AI models that are trained on just massive amounts of diverse medical data. Everything from medical images and text to genomic information and electronic health records.
So they're like these super AI models that have this really broad understanding of all things health and medicine.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And once you have these foundational models, you can then fine-tune them for very specific tasks, like, diagnosing a particular disease or predicting how a patient might respond to a certain treatment.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's kind of like, having a master chef who can then specialize in different types of cuisine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And the possibilities really are endless. So, we talked about automating tumor documentation. Well, imagine using these foundational models to streamline the entire clinical trial process, from selecting patients to analyzing the data to even writing the reports.
I mean, that would be revolutionary. You could potentially bring new treatments to patients so much faster.
That's right. But, as we develop these increasingly sophisticated AI systems, we also need to make sure that they're reliable and that they're robust enough to be used in those real-world clinical settings.
Right, because it doesn't matter how fancy your AI model is. If it doesn't actually work properly in, a busy hospital or clinic.
Exactly. And that's why researchers are really focusing on things like, addressing this issue of catastrophic forgetting, which is basically where AI models can sometimes forget information that they've previously learned when they're being updated with new data.
Oh, that's interesting. It's kind of like when I try to learn a new language and then I start forgetting words in my native language.
Yeah, it's a similar concept, and researchers are developing these techniques to help AI models retain that general knowledge while still being able to learn and adapt to new information. But it's not just about, preventing these models from forgetting what they've learned. It's also about making sure that they can handle all the variability that exists in real-world healthcare data.
Variability.
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, we talked earlier about that research on mammography systems in the UK. And they found that even within one type of medical imaging, there can be so much variation in how those images are processed and analyzed.
So an AI model that's been trained on data from one hospital might not work as well on data from another hospital?
That's the concern. And it highlights the need to develop AI models that are really robust, that can adapt to all these variations, and that can generalize effectively across different settings and patient populations.
So it's not enough to just develop AI models that are smart.
Right.
You also have to make sure that they can function in the real world.
Exactly. And another really important area of research is focused on making these AI models more transparent and understandable.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, a lot of AI models have been considered to be these black boxes, where it's really difficult to understand how they're coming to their conclusions. But in healthcare, it's crucial that we understand why an AI is making a particular recommendation.
So if an AI suggests a specific diagnosis or treatment plan, we want to be able to understand why.
Exactly. And that's why researchers are trying to make these models more interpretable so that we can understand, what factors are driving their decisions. And that could help to build trust in these AI systems and make sure that they're being used in the right way.
Yeah, trust is so important, especially when it comes to our health.
Absolutely. And as AI becomes more integrated into healthcare, it's essential that both patients and clinicians feel confident in the recommendations that these systems are making.
Well, after this deep dive, I definitely feel a lot more optimistic about the future of healthcare with AI. It just seems like there's so much potential to improve, diagnosis, treatment, even our understanding of health and disease in general.
I agree. And what's really exciting is that this is really just the beginning. We're only starting to see what AI can do in healthcare.
It makes you wonder what the next few years will bring. Maybe we'll have, AI-powered personal health assistants or virtual doctors that can answer our questions, anytime, anywhere.
Who knows? But one thing's for sure, it's going to be really interesting to see how this all unfolds. And as we've talked about, it's important to remember those ethical considerations and to make sure that these technologies are developed and used in a way that benefits everyone.
It's been fantastic learning about all this with you. I feel like I've come away from this conversation feeling both informed and really inspired. What a deep dive.